So, if you watched last episode, you will know that I've started the construction of the tank for my pre-war BSA. Now, that's all very well and good, but at the moment, this one is still going to hold more fuel than this one because it hasn't got a bottom. Now, this is not an episode where I just weld on a sheet of steel and off we go, we've got a fuel tank, because it is much more complex than that. Now again, if you've watched the last episode, you will already know that, because we have got a baffle to weld in there. We've also got a double wall to separate it from fuel at the back, oil at the front. So today we need to tackle that problem, and it's going to be a little bit of a complex one. So, how am I going to go about this? Well, there are many ways that you could go about doing this, and I'm not sure how the BSA factory did it, because this baffle here is actually soldered in at the bottom, at the top, and at both sides. So, how on earth they did that, I can only imagine, because obviously to access any of that, you've got to have a panel off. But how do you do that if you're going to solder that panel on as well? I don't know, tricky stuff. So I've been trying to come up with a way around it in my head, and I've enlisted the help of none other than Mr. Template. You've seen me make many templates before, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But what I am going to bore you with is how I think this will work. So, if we've got a tank like this and we want a baffle to go in around about here, how are we going to get that secured on all sides? I originally thought maybe that's not too big of a deal, but actually I think it's going to add quite a bit of strength, so I think it's worth doing. And what I'm thinking is, if I can make this template, I can fold down these edges like so, forgive the curl, and then basically we can weld in that back section, and that will allow us to access all the 3 points inside where we're going to weld it, and then we'll be able to put a panel on from there and join it down the middle. I think that's going to be the best way of doing it. As I said, there are many ways of doing it, but this is the way I've kind of worked out in my head. So let's take Mr. Template to the steel, cut it out, and then we'll try and get some bends in there and see if we can get it to fit. Right, so the template has been transferred to steel. So it's the same gauge steel that we used to fabricate the rest of the tank. Now we're going to take it over to the fly press. So remember last time I made that little tool that put in a nice rounded edge for doing these creases along the tank. Well, I've got a different tool on there this time. This one actually puts in a sharp 90-degree bend. So we're going to go and put in our bends, and then we'll have a little test fit and see how it fits in the tank. I actually mucked that up. As you probably saw, I bent this section first, which is wrong because then you can't get it in the fly press to bend these. So I had to unbend it and then put the crease in these. But that's come out all right. So now, in theory, that should fit in there like that. And that's actually quite a nice fit, if I might say so myself. But we're not quite done with that yet, because if you look on this tank, you'll see there are 2 holes drilled through to allow fuel to pass through mid-level. Down the bottom, these corners, like on mine, are cut away. That would allow a little bit of fuel through, but we need to put the holes in there. So we're going to take that out, we'll mark up the holes, and then we'll drill it out with the hole saw, the same way that we did the 2 holes on the top of the tank for the filler caps. And then we can have a go at maybe tacking it in there, and maybe the test fit on the frame as well, see how it fits. So I've gone ahead and I've tacked on the bottom layer, and if you can see that, it marries up beautifully. I'm very pleased with that indeed. And also in there, obviously that places our baffle nicely. But something I had neglected to remember is the way these tank mounts. Now, this is not like the usual saddle tanks that you get on modern motorcycles, but this actually mounts through the bottom with 2 holes about there. Now, the mounting system obviously is attached from inside, and I can partially see it on the rusted out tank I have, but not enough to make out what it actually is. And I had some ideas of what I could do, but I think this would be a good point to see what Mr. Rick Parkington has to say. So let's head on over to Rick's, hopefully he's free, and can give us the time to see what would be good to do. Right, well, I've just got to Rick's, and I'm glad I came, because Rick has actually got another tank, and he's also got 2 mounts removed.
Yeah, well, I think I can spare you the mounts out of this tank. I don't think I'll be using this one for a while, so yeah, managed to dig these out, and basically they're these sort of cruciform things. The front one's trimmed down, you might be able to see, because it goes quite close to the oil tank,
right,
where the oil tank goes inside like that. So
okay.
Next thing is to just basically get them unsoldered from the rusty metal, and also to get this broken bolt out. There's a couple of those, we really don't want to break them off in the hole. There's one already broken in the hole that need drilled out, but try and get these out in one piece if we can. So
cool.
That's the next job. So
excellent.
So if we just put that on here and heat it up, we should better get that free. Beautiful. It's difficult when you've got it so thin on the end, you can't get much force on it, you've got to keep the heat going on it.
Right.
Just moving little bits at a time.
Thin is in where it's rusted out.
Yeah. So easy to break it. When first tried to undo it, I felt it twist, but I realised it was the bolt twisting rather than it coming undone, so that would have broken straight off.
Right, okay.
There it is. The great thing is when it's steel into brass, there's no real reason you shouldn't be able to get it out, but I always think with anything like this, whatever time you put into getting it out without breaking it is worth it. It's such a pain when they break off. There you go. Even got the remains of a washer on it.
Hey.
Right, I'm just going to wire wheel off the head of this broken bolt so we can see what we're drilling out. Quite difficult to centre on, I think. Oh, bloody hell. The bolt has disappeared. It must have just been a load of rusty crap in the end. So, oh well, that's a result. All done.
Yeah, that's alright, isn't it?
Wow.
So, I've just got back from Rick's, and that was a bit of a result really. I wasn't expecting him to come up with some tank mounts for me. Now, obviously, that's great because they're kind of original. We can do it more like the original tank. It does mean we're going to have to solder them in. But for those of you that maybe couldn't see in the last shots, that is the shape that we're dealing with. I've got 2 little bolts popped in the bottom there so that I can use that for a mocking up purpose when it comes to actually putting on the mounts. Now, the reason they're this shape, I believe, is 1, so that you get a good soldering bond, but also 2, to make it that little bit stronger. Obviously, like Rick was saying, this one hasn't got a front portion because it marries right up against the wall of where it divides from oil to petrol. So we're going to have a little think about mounting those very soon, but before we can do that, we need to make up a front section. So I think we'll make a little template, cut it out of steel, and then see where we're at. So I've got my piece of steel cut out now, and I've also marked off where I'm going to bend it, because I'm doing this out of 1 piece. I will need to bend it when it gets to here so that it fits up against this portion at the front. Now, I think I mentioned before, but you see how this is a different shape to on the original tank. It's got more of a point to it. We're going to have to put a crease in vertically as well on our new piece of metal. So I think that will be kind of a cool feature for this bike. It will make it a little bit custom. It wasn't intentional, but I'm kind of pleased it happened. So that's pretty cool. The only thing left to do now is take this over to the fly press. We're going to put a sharp crease in it, and yeah, then we can have a little test fit and play around and see what we're going to do about the crease in the front. Right, well, I've just finished putting the creases in the lower part of the tank. There we go. And I can't lie, it's kind of not what I imagined. I think I thought I'd do a better job than that. But that being said, when you actually take it to the tank and you put it on, it doesn't look so bad. It looks quite neat. And I think once it's actually on the bike, I think it'll look pretty cool. It'll also be kind of shadowed, so you won't really notice it unless you properly look at it. I think we can get away with it. So it's kind of, it still needs a little bit of fettling to get it to fit properly. So whilst it's a little bit unprofessional, I think what I'm going to do is tack it in place and then cut it down, just skim off the excess that's overhanging. Yeah, it's unprofessional, but I'm not a professional, so who cares? Anyway, let's get the MIG welder out and we can get cracking on that. Well, we now have the bottom piece tacked in place. And at the front there, it doesn't look too bad at all. It looks a little bit like a shovel, but as I say, I think it will be shadowed by the rest of the tank, and I think we can get away with it. So now is the point where we need to kind of start thinking about mounting the tank mounts in place. That is going to be a fairly involved job, because what we'll have to do is we'll have to pop it in the frame, and get it central, and then we're going to have to drill the holes whilst it's in the frame. We'll do it one by one, and then we'll have to take it out, cut all these tacks off at the bottom, solder those in place, put it back together, and test fit it. So that is going to be a job for another day. We've made some pretty good progress, but honestly this tank just feels like it's taking forever to make. It is almost like having an entire different project. This thing is a project of its own, but I think once we've got there, it'll be worth it because we can really start making some moves with the bike, and it will actually start to look like a motorcycle instead of just a rusty frame and some forks. So that's going to be it from us today. A massive thank you to you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed and you want to see more, what are you doing? Click the button, get subscribed. Ta very much, and I'll see you next time.